Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for our delayed start. I was having, GoToWebinar was having a few issues, but it seems to be resolved now. Give me about 2 minutes and we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to give everyone a minute or two anyway so they can make sure everyone's logged on. But we'll get started just in one moment. All right, I appreciate everyone's patience. We will get started. Just want to add one last thing to make sure our video that I want to play is going to be able to work. This is the joy of technology. I had to switch computers last second. Everything was all set over there. All right, well, it looks like I'll have to forgo my video today. That's okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I thank you for all of your patience. If you could do me a favor, we're gonna get started, but if you notice the question box at the bottom, if you can use that to ask questions throughout the presentation, but if you wanna let me know that you found it by putting something in there, it lets me know you can hear me okay and see my shared screen okay, that would be super helpful. Wonderful. I see some folks letting me know. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who have been on these webinars before, this is you're familiar with how these work. If not, give you a bit of background. So these are meant to be pretty kind of high-level overviews of different topics related to mentoring and youth development. So it will, of course, you know, there will be some things we kind of have to gloss over. You know, it can't get as in-depth as I'd like, but I do want to make sure that we're able to bring as much of this to your relevance of your program as much as possible. So if you do have specific questions, please put them in the chat. I try to make these pretty high level in general, but if you ask specific questions about your program, I'm more than happy to bring that directly to you in that way. I found that that's the most effective way to do these. We have these are only about 45 minutes or so we can try to make sure you get as much content as possible in that time. And then I'll open it up to any more general questions at the end. I try to answer some questions as we go, but some of them I'll save till the end. And I'll make sure we have my contact information at the end so you can reach out with anything else that we don't go over. So with that said, today we're going to talk a bit about social emotional learning and mentoring. A bit about me and Mentor New York. So for those of you who don't know, so my name is Jack Kavanaugh. I'm our Director of Training and Program Development. I've worked with youth development and youth mentoring programs for the past 15 years, summer camps, after school programs, school-based programs, both in public and private school systems, and in other community-based organizations. My background is in social work. I've been here with Mentor New York about 2.5 years now, providing training and consulting services to, dozens of various programs around the state. I do have my dog here behind me. We decided this was a fun week to adopt a second dog. So we've been doing that to add on to any craziness. So if you hear her kind of woofing in the background, that's why she's still adjusting. Yes, thank you for saying hi, Winnie. So Mentor New York, for those of you who don't know, is a statewide organization that's part of the national network of Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. So we serve mentoring programs really across New York State. I'm based out of our office in Western New York and Buffalo. We also have an office in New York City, and we serve programs on Long Island as well, with office there, as well as footprints really across the entire state. We do this through training and consulting services, as well as other types of programmatic supports. So our job is to be a resource to you, those of you who work directly with young people. These are our kind of free public webinars. We like to present some information to you, but we're always available for individual consultations as well. And that's really the bulk of the work that we do. So onto the content. So social and emotional learning, I think it's good to have a shared definition. So we're going to start there. Social and emotional learning is a complex and ongoing process of development spanning childhood and adulthood, which influences our ability to understand ourselves, manage our emotions, form healthy relationships, and navigate the environments and communities where we learn, work, and play. And so really, I think it's good to think of social emotional learning and our abilities to do this, especially as we think about how we support young people in getting better, as being about how do we interact with the communities and the world around us, and what is our relationship like with the world around us. And so when folks have strong social emotional learning capabilities, they're able to build and navigate the world around them through relationships, through understanding systems and structures in a way that's more nuanced and support and more effective. And one of the ways that we can do that is through mentoring as mentors and with mentoring relationships is be able to support these by modeling a lot of these and to be able to provide feedback and support on helping young people grow these specific attributes. I think it's important when we talk about this, that social emotional learning, social emotional skills, social emotional growth, I think have reached a certain buzzword status in a lot of youth development spaces. And I think that's not a bad thing, because I think they are incredibly important. But it's important to remember too that we're talking about a huge range of skills and capabilities. It's a really large umbrella term that covers any number of abilities. And so we really want to key in and make sure we're talking about them in a way that honors that. So it's important to remember that what this looks like with different people in different programs, age groups, community settings might be a little bit different. So we're going to talk about some pretty kind of, fundamental and rudimentary ways that mentors can be sure to be infusing some of the things in their own relationships, as well as the programs that we run to help support mentors, to help, build these skills. So again, social emotional learning, just to have that shared definition, it's progressive, right? So it builds on top of each other. So young people and adults too, we will build relationships and skills, and then our abilities to form more complicated relationships and develop more nuanced social emotional skills, scaffolds on top of that. right? And so some of that might be, our self-esteem then parlays into our ability to, be successful in school, which then turns into, college and career growth, and then that becomes into networking skills, right? All of these things start to scaffold on top of each other. It's integral to academic learning. They go hand in hand. A lot of mentoring programs are really focused on academic growth, which I think is great. But we'll focus a lot on things like tutoring, but sometimes I think is really important as well to make sure we're talking about these types of interventions that are providing a lot of support to mentoring programs around and young people around the social emotional skills, because it will correlate really strongly with academic improvements as well. It is cultural and contextual. So again, it's a huge umbrella of terms and concepts that we're talking about. So we want to make sure that as we're talking about young people and their social emotional growth. Sorry, 1 second. The dog decided this was a great moment to start chewing on her collar. So I'm going to take that over for a minute. I apologize. You have toys. So cultural and contextual. It's also correlated with positive long-term outcomes. So, as things grow and we encourage these things, like I was talking about how they scaffold, they start to scaffold in ways that go really beyond even what we might anticipate, right? Really strong long-term outcomes we'll talk about in a minute. There's historical and societal factors, right? So if we have young people growing up in settings where they are, maybe not receiving as much of the social and emotional support from family or from community as they might in other spaces, that can have an impact on, their ability to improve and navigate relationships and systems. And again, it's just as important as adults as for youth. We'll talk a lot about mentoring young people and what that means. But, when we're talking about young people, we're not just talking about, 12-year-olds or, we're talking about or people under 18 even. This is true for anyone up to, when we say young people, typically we're talking about up to age about 25. But even, for any of us, ourselves, if you look at your own life, that these are types of things that we're constantly working on and improving. So how does mentoring fit into this, right? So relationships are really the foundation. So any sense of trying to improve any social emotional skills or social emotional learning, we'll have different curriculums that people use or anything, but the relationships are really the foundational piece of any of that work. I always think of relationships, I'll use two analogies, and hopefully these are helpful to you. The first one is that thinking of relationships as like the foundation of a house, right? If you're building a house, you start with the foundation. You're not going to go in there and before you have anything else built, start buying furniture or putting in electrical. You have to make sure that things are happening in a certain order. And so it's really crucial to make sure that these relationships are built in a way that's as strong as possible. Because again, my second analogy is that relationships are like building the pipeline, right? It doesn't matter what you're trying to push through that pipeline. If you're not building it first, it's never going to get there. And so no matter what kind of curriculum or content you're trying to really push, if we don't take the time to build the relationship first and build that pipeline first, they're never going to hear it, right? And so that's where I think relationships are so important. Young people also need stable environments and healthy relationships, both inside and outside of school. Mentoring as a relationship building tool is so important because one of the things that it does is it models what is a stable, safe, and healthy relationship. For some young people, they're not getting that at home, they're not getting that at school, they're not getting that in their communities. And so we want to make sure that as the mentor, we are modeling them what a healthy, positive relationship can look like. We want to build that, and especially stable relationships as well. And sometimes young people might get this at school, but if school is the only place they're getting it, we want to make sure they're, it's translating to their relationships outside of school as well. And that's another place where mentoring relationships can really fit in. And so mentoring has outcomes in lots of social emotional, has improves outcomes in many kind of facets of social emotional growth and learning, right? And again, I said before to think about these as such a wide umbrella of topics. And so some of them, not only these, but attitudes towards self and others in school, specific skills like self-regulation or problem solving, positive mental health outcomes, identity development, which I think is really important, and improved relationships. And so those are just some of the ways where mentoring specifically overlaps with social emotional growth. So what can mentors do? So a few things. One is they can put that relationship first, right? Build that foundation, make sure that it's happening in a way that is setting the stage for future growth and future support. Secondly, model and demonstrate behaviors. So understanding, if we're trying to support young people in building social emotional skills, things like, pro-social behavior, like caring about your community, engagement with, school and academics, positive relationship with school. We want mentors that are modeling those behaviors and talking about those things in a way that's fostering that, right? And so it's not always just content and curriculum. It's also about what are we modeling and supporting in just the way we speak about each other and talk about different things. We want to make sure we're creating safe and caring spaces. So, whether that's a physical space like a community center or a school or a classroom, or a virtual space like just me connecting. And, this is, as while we're in this space, this webinar space, for example, we're creating a space here. And then thinking of the relationship as a way to create those spaces, right? That this relationship becomes a space where I'm modeling what it means to be a safe and caring adult for young people. And we want to make sure we're empowering mentees to set their own goals, right? Because that's something that's really important. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But mentees and young people should be able to set their own goals, really set the pace for their own growth and development so that they are accomplishing as much as possible and it's as relevant to themselves as possible. Because as we all know, if you're trying to support young people to achieve any goal, they're going to be that much more likely to achieve it and accomplish it if it's a goal that they've set themselves. So for the next little bit, we're going to talk about, and I think is the best way to really think about how mentoring can interplay with social emotional learning is through the developmental relationships framework. So for some of you, you may be familiar with this from sitting in our webinar, some of you might not, but we're going to talk through them because I really think this is, like I said, the most important and easily accessible way for mentoring programs and mentors to leverage their relationships for stronger social emotional learning. So the Search Institute, through their work, identified 5 pieces of what happens in positive relationships with adults that result in, positive development, youth development for young people. And so we talk about positive youth development. A lot of what we're talking about is that these social emotional skills that they're able to learn and develop over time. And so those 5 things that they identified were adults who express care, provide support, challenge growth, share power, and expand possibilities. Now, typically, here's where I would have a really fun video for you to watch, but sadly with GoToWebinar, it was giving me a bit of a hard time with that. So I won't be able to share this with you, but I encourage you to look this up and watch the YouTube video about this. In no small part because there's some really cute kids that are in this video that I always really like to watch and share with people because this is a really adorable video. I will be sharing the slides out with you after this, so you'll be able to access it through there, as well as you can just search The Relationships Matter on YouTube and it'll come up. Okay, so first we have adults who express care, right? So that's adults who are dependable, spend time, adults who listen, adults believe in young people, adults who are warm, showing that they enjoy spending time with young people, and adults who encourage, adults who praise young people for their effort and accomplishments. I tend to find this is the one that programs have the easiest time with because they're probably doing it already. It's just that basic sense of warmth and comfort and camaraderie with young people. And most people who engage in a mentoring relationship, they want this. So people will do this. You'll find throughout a lot of these, there are probably things that mentors are doing already because anyone who does any kind of work with young people, we pick up on this stuff. I think it's useful to have this framework for 2 reasons. One, it starts shifting. One, it provides some positive ideas for you to think about and infuse into your program, right? Different aspects of things that we can add into the programs that we serve and the way that we, or the young people that we serve and the way that we relate to them. The second one is also shifting from doing it sort of like because we stumbled upon it and it kind of works, into starting to really do it because it's on purpose and it's strategic in order to, reach optimal outcomes. And so as we're designing a mentoring session, we're going to say, let me back up. So we're going to say, today we really want to focus on sharing power, right? So let's focus on that. Today we really want to focus on, or as we're designing it, how is this program that we're engaging with and the structure that we're providing, so this curriculum or these activities, challenging growth? Like, how are we doing that? And making sure you have a system in place. Because again, some of the things you're doing probably already are, but if we're just kind of stumbling upon it by accident or doing them sometimes, it can really lessen the amount of impact that we're able to make. And lastly, I also think this is a powerful tool because it provides us a strengths-based perspective to start engaging with and thinking about how our programs and our mentoring relationships intersect with families and school staff or other supportive adults in their lives. I find that a lot of mentoring programs and youth development programs in general, we can have a bit of a deficit model when we think about our engagement with families and parents, right? That parents aren't providing something that we need to, engage with. And there's a lot of really, I think, deficit language around the way that we talk about families and parents, especially in both educational and youth development and mentoring settings. And so I think this does is it allows us to start thinking about too that, no young person or no mentor needs to provide all 5 of these things all the time. But we can start to think about which things are they getting from home, which things are they getting from school, and so which do I need to provide? So if I know that my mentee has at least some type of relationship with someone at home who is able to provide some support, but what they really need from me is some, help with challenging growth. I can really focus in on that. And it also helps because I find that, mentors sometimes can feel like we have to do everything for our mentee because they have so much need. And we can start to really get overwhelmed by that. And so being able to key in on just like 1, 2, or 2 of these types of pieces that we can start to contribute really helps mentors start to make better sense of the relationship. So let me go back to express care. So expressing care, like I said, that's each of the easiest one I think that programs do. But the second one is provide support. So that's having adults who navigate, adults, guiding young people through hard situations and systems, adults who empower, so building young people's confidence, adults advocate on behalf of young people, and adults who set boundaries, putting in place limits that keep them on track. So I like my kind of visual analogies, so hopefully this is useful for you. But I think 2 ways to think about this one is one, like I don't know if you guys go bowling, but sometimes when I go bowling, I'll have them put the little bumpers out so I can't throw the gutter ball, because sometimes I just don't really, my self-esteem can't handle a day of gutter balls. And so I think sometimes providing support is thinking of being the mentors, being those little bumpers, right? We're not going to have them throw a strike every time. Like ultimately they're rolling the ball and they have to kind of do a good job, but we're at least making sure that, we're there on the outside, making sure they're not at least throwing gutter balls, right? We're keeping them at least a little bit on track. So they have their space to make sure that they're the ones who are accomplishing, but we're providing some structure, support, and boundaries to help them stay on track. The second way to think about it is as like the GPS unit, right? So the mentor is the GPS in the car. And so the mentee is ultimately the one driving the car. They're deciding if they want to turn right or left. They're the one putting in the destination, but we're the ones sitting there next to them and saying, if you really want to get to this destination, the best way to do that is to turn left up here, then take a right. And then if they're like, I don't want to do that, I'm just going to take a U-turn and go backwards. We're like, okay, recalculating, let's find a new route. We're working with them to provide some of that support and structure, but they're driving the car, they're driving the conversation, and they're pushing the work forward and identifying those destinations. We're just laying out the map. Challenge growth, so it's adults who expect the best of young people, adults who stretch, push young people to go further, holding young people accountable, and helping young people reflect on failures. And this is really important too, because we want to make sure we're helping young people set goals. And if they succeed at that goals, we say, that's awesome, congratulations, let's set a new one. And if they fail that goal, we say, that's too bad, what did we learn from that? Maybe we need to recalibrate what goal we are, or maybe we're working on being able to set a new strategy to accomplish that goal. And this is where some of those growth mindset pieces come in, if that's something you're familiar with in the work of Carol Dweck, which we've done some webinars on in the past, and you can find recordings of that on our website. But we want to make sure that, you know, we're supporting young people. Again, if we're thinking about social emotional learning and social emotional growth, so much of that is their ability to navigate failure and navigate making mistakes. And so this is a really good opportunity for us to be able to, as mentors, support young people in navigating that. Sharing power. So it's also to respect young people, taking them seriously and treating them fairly. We want adults to include young people, involving them in the decisions that affect them. We want adults who collaborate with young people, working with them to solve problems and reach goals. And we want adults who let young people lead. I find this one to be the one that a lot of programs struggle with because it's tough as adults. You know, we're not always trained to share power. And so sometimes this looks like setting up a youth advisory council to help you make decisions about your program. For mentors, it can look like helping them, you know, having mentees plan activities or let them control what types of things you guys are working on. I also think it's important because there are times where we're not able to, you know, we just have to make decisions for young people for the program, right? Because they were pressed for time or resources, and we just, you know, we don't have the opportunity to share that power with them. But even in those situations, we can start explaining to them why we're making that decision. So if we're doing a certain activity because we got a grant who wants us to fund us doing that specific activity, then we say to them, we say, listen, some people, you know, really are passionate about our work and they gave us some money to help support it. And this is what they really want to, you know, us to use it on. So we're going to do this activity with you. And then you can maybe make some feedback and suggestions that we can offer for next time, right? So even if we can't let them make those decisions, we can at least share the rationale and reasoning behind the decisions that we are making to help bring them into the fold and help them understand what's happening. And we want adults to expand possibilities. So that's adults who inspire young people to see possibilities, adults who broaden horizons, exposing them to new ideas, experiences, and places, and adults that connect young people to others who could help them develop and thrive. I think a big part of mentoring and why mentoring is so powerful is this ability for the mentor to really draw young people into their own social network and expand their own social capital. And so it's really important that, you know, as we are helping them do that, that we're modeling why it's important, right? So sometimes we think about, I think, expanding possibilities for young people, especially around mentoring relationships, specifically around like college and career, right? Like exposing them to new schools or career opportunities that they might not have been exposed to before. I think that's great. But sometimes I think we can get really bogged down in like making sure that it's something we think is really relevant to them or really, again, focusing a lot on the content. But I think there's a lot of value as well in modeling for them the joy and experience of you know, learning new things and experiencing new things. And so even if it's not something that, you know, they're going to really, you know, like you're taking them to a museum about something they might think is kind of boring, but they get there and they get excited, right? And so maybe it's not the content of that museum that is what's really important to them, but it's the action of being exposed to something new and finding that fun and exciting and like liberating. And they're going to be able to benefit from that. So those are those 5 pieces: express care, provide support, challenge growth, share power, and expand possibilities. And so through the mentoring relationship, we want to make sure that, you know, young people are getting access to all of these. But again, they don't need to be getting all of these from the mentoring relationship itself, right? We can think about what types of things are they getting from home, what types of things do they get from school. They might already have adults in their lives. And, you know, although, again, some of those adults might not be able to carry out all these activities, we make sure we aren't discounting what the adults can do. We want to get away from this notion that like young people have no one. They might have someone who can love them and believe in them, but this might not lead to opportunities to help them achieve academically, for example. And again, in the context of social emotional learning, that relationship and support they're getting at home or elsewhere might help be setting some of that stage, but it's not showing them and modeling them and challenging them to be able to pursue some of those things, you know, more aggressively. That's going to help them develop those social emotional skills. And so setting that relationship as that space of thriving and wrapping your caring relationship and wrapping our arms around them is going to really set the stage for them to be able to achieve. And so we want to make sure we're always celebrating what it is that adults can offer, right? Because that's a big part of anyone's social and emotional growth. So we're going to talk through this, and then I have one more slide that we'll do a quick kind of try to do some kind of activity, see how well it translates to the webinar format. But I also think it's important to remember that there's stages to developing a relationship, right? So there's that beginning and building phase. There's that testing and challenging phase, right? So that's when the honeymoon's kind of over. They're pushing and pulling and making sure that the mentor is going to be there and stick around. Once they kind of built that trust, that's when that real mentoring begins. So the relationship starts to deepen, the relationship starts to get taken to that next level, and then finally we have that sort of closure, relationship transition. We'll use the language closure a lot, which I think is useful, but sometimes it's not the relationship ending, it's a renegotiation is usually the way I'll talk about it. And so we think about these 5 elements, we want to make sure that seeing where they fit into that sort of timeline as well, right? So at the beginning, we're really going to focus on expressing care because we want to make sure we're setting the stage for them to, to feel warmth and cared about. I was just talking earlier this morning with a program about mentoring young people who are impacted by trauma. And one of the big things that comes up is always, and I think when we using the context of social emotional learning, is how do we use the mentoring relationship to show young people that they live and exist in a world that cares about them and wants them to be safe and whole, right? And that's a huge piece of what this is, because so much of social emotional growth is, again, it's about helping young people understand the relationship and better navigate their relationship with the world around them and with themselves. And so if we're using a mentoring relationship to be able to say, the world is a safe place that cares about you and you are a worthwhile person, then those other skills are going to be able to flow from that. And so when we're starting that relationship, we're really focusing on just that expressing care, right? Being dependable and listening. For some reason, the colors are got a little screwy with share power, but we'll also start doing some of that at the beginning, right? We can help, letting them take some charge over activities that you're doing, or having voice in the mentoring relationship in some way. And so you start to get that, respect me and include me. And then as the relationship starts to continue on, you can start doing a bit more, like providing some of that support, right? Navigating and empowering. We want to start doing that, especially when they start pushing back and challenging, because we want to make sure that we're letting them know that this relationship isn't going anywhere, right? We're modeling healthy relationships. We're modeling how to navigate, those types of behaviors. And then once we get through that really challenging phase, that's when we can really start focusing on expanding possibilities and challenging growth, right? We're not going to start day one with a young person coming in and then we're saying, let me help you, hold you accountable for your failures, right? Because we haven't built the trust yet. And we have to make sure we're doing that in a way that's really moving forward. So here's a worksheet that I'll use with programs a lot. And what I want, people can use the question box to share some ideas. But with any of these, just put in the question box which one you're talking about: express care, provide support, challenge growth, share power, or expand possibilities. And let me know, what are some things that we can do, right? What are things that you can say and do as a mentor to use these things to promote social and emotional growth? So take a second and start putting some of those in the question box, and I'll read some out in a minute. I see a few responses filtering in. I'll give people one more minute or two to get some in, and then I'll read some out loud. So again, looking at these 5 things on the left, what are things that mentors can say or do in order to do them? All right, great. I'm going to start reading them out, but there's some really good answers coming in. So I'll start with express care. So some people said things like, things you can say is, I'm glad you're here today, right? Building a friendship, I think, is really important. One of them who wrote this that I think is always such like a weirdly underrated thing, but I think is really important, but remembering and ask about things that they brought up, right? So like if they said, oh, this weekend I'm, going camping, and then the next time you see them say, hey, I was camping, right? Like just really simple things like that. Or remembering their siblings' names, or that they have siblings, or what their parents do, or things like that. Like making sure they feel valued by just remembering things that they say, I think is really crucial. And that really shows that you care because you're remembering them. Let's see, provide support. I see someone said something around, what is that? Oh, that's challenge growth. There's a couple good challenge growth ones on here that I'm going to read out. But some of them are about like, what did we learn from that, right? I think that's a really good one. Or saying, someone wrote the word yet, which is a big growth mindset thing, right? Of like helping them recognize goals that they can't accomplish yet. I think that's really important. Let's see, share power, allow young people to lead the conversations or be ready with the topic they want to discuss and learn about, most definitely. Someone said, even saying, what would you like to do the next time we get together, right? That's so small, but really powerful, of just saying, what are the things that you want to really be able for us to accomplish with this time together, right? Let them take that lead. That's really important as well. Expand possibilities, sharing resources, connect them to those in your circle and network. I think that's a really powerful way to do that, right? Thinking of the different people that we know that can help support them and show them things, even if we can't. We can open up some of our social capital and social networks to young people. Some of the provide support thing, let me go back to that because I skipped that one. I see someone wrote something about the GPS, so telling them like, oh, you might want to try this, or here are some ways that I've seen other people be able to do that. I think that's really powerful too. But helping them take that shape is really crucial. If anyone has any last ones, let me just go through really quick to see if I missed anything major. I think I got most of them. I mean, someone just wrote build a friendship, which I think is really a good way to think about it. Again, that foundation. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So this is a really great tool you can even use with mentors, right? So we'll have the sheets and things like that. So you can bring them out and say, here are some, have them fill this out and identify things that they can say and do with their mentees. That can be really powerful. All right, so I'm gonna open up for questions to you guys. I'm gonna also make sure I put my email address into the chat box so you can reach out with any other specific questions you might have. But like I said, we try to keep these relatively, high level as an overview, so that way we can, meet with you individually if you have specific things that you want to know about how it relates to your program or how you can change things in your program. Someone did put in here with resources for college age and adult mentors and mentees too. Absolutely. We work with lots of college-based programs that are both, mentoring college students as well as young adults and adults in the workplace, things like that. So we work with tons of programs like that. And a lot of this is, just as applicable for that as well. But if you wanted to reach out after this, we can definitely connect and I can help you figure out the best way to navigate that. Give people 1 more minute to include any questions they might have. So always a question about assessment, I think, and evaluation. So how do you assess success of implementing these things? I think that's what's so crucial about and what's important about these types of this type of framework is it's so foundational that it improves outcomes so broadly. So you look at what, you know, and we did an evaluation on program evaluation I don't know, time is so fluid. It was like a month ago. And so we talked a bit more in depth about that, like identifying outcomes and, you know, how to do some of that work, that setting. But I think it's, sorry, 1 second. It's understanding that, you know, so much of what, no matter what kind of outcomes you already identified, right? Because most mentoring programs, you'll have some type of, you know, outcomes, whether that's academic improvement, self-esteem skills, whether that's pro-social skills is one I work with programs a lot on, positive relationships, positive attitude towards school, positive attitude toward family, all of those types of things. Setting the framework really strong is going to improve all of those. So no matter what you've kind of identified is really going to kind of raise all of those ships. And so however you're already assessing, you know, whatever outcomes it is that you're planning on assessing, this doesn't really change or, you know, any of that. You should still be able to do that. There are some really like holistic, and again, in the program evaluation webinar, we talked more about this, like really in-depth, holistic, social, emotional growth tools. And so actually one thing I'll show you, let me pull this up, actually, I can share this. So on the website of the National Mentoring Resource Center, which is a really great tool and resource for mentoring programs, they have, well, 2 things. One is you can request no-cost help for your program. And so this is where you would go if you want to request specific assistance from us on your program. But if you go in here, you can go to Measurement Guidance Toolkit and social emotional skills. So here are some really great social emotional skills, like really specific ones. So the youth-centered outcomes is a really great one for especially challenging growth. But say perseverance, and this will give a scale. So the measure of adolescent well-being perseverance scale that you can access for free as well. And so it's a really great resource as well if you're looking for small scale instruments to measure really specific social emotional outcomes. So I highly recommend that. So again, this is nationalmentoringresourcecenter.org, and it's the measurement guidance toolkit over here in the Learning Hub. Okay, did anyone else have any other specific questions? All right, well, please reach out if you do end up with anything specific you're curious about. I appreciate everyone taking the time out to connect with us today. We are always available for individual consultations with programs. So if there are specific things you want, I mean, that's really the best way to get as much support as possible from us. And we'll be able to provide, you know, a little bit deeper support on your program specifically. Otherwise, have a great day. This will be recorded and put up on our website. And I'm gonna have our team send out the slides as well, so you should be able to get those. But I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and thank you for joining us.